break, everyone. Hope you had some water and some snacks and are high energy coming off of the morning. And lovely to see all of your faces popping up. I am the CEO of Common Impact, and we're going to dive into a conversation with two incredible nonprofit leaders. We have with us today Monique Jones, who runs Forefront Illinois, and Bevon Joseph, who is co-founder of the Greenwood Project, who is a participating nonprofit today. So he can also tell us in real time how it's going. Wanted to take a short break from the action. We've got a little over half an hour together today to talk about the context in which this work sits, and in particular to think about the impact that COVID has had on the nonprofit sector, on the communities that it serves, and what the path forward is now that we are coming to the other side of the depths of the pandemic, what that means for the nonprofit sector and the communities that it serves. And Monique and Bevon both have a really up close and personal view on that. And as my colleague Katie shared at the top of the event in a really meaningful way, also want to acknowledge the timing context that this event sits in, and that this has been a really hard day and week for social justice and for the nonprofit sector. And while yesterday's verdict, we hope, is a signal of progress, we also know that it's not justice. We know that it is not the policy and the systems and the structural change that we need. And that was made even more clear when, at the same time that the verdict was coming down, we were hearing about the murder of another child. And I've heard the refrain over a lot, particularly over the past 12 hours, that we have a lot of work to do. There is a lot of work to do. And that work is so often sparked and led and held by the nonprofit sector. And so before we dive into our planned conversation, I would love, Monique, from you, and then Bevon from you, to hear your reflection on the verdict and what you think it means for the sector.
Thank you, Danielle, for calling it out, and thank you all for having me here. It's so interesting to be a therapist in this time, and not working in therapy, because I still get to use those skills. But like all of you, I had my eyes glued, and I actually shut everything else down to CNN yesterday and on the phone with my husband, who was at work. And when the verdict was read, I cried, and I heard my husband crying. And thankfully, my daughter was still in remote school. Got to thank remote school. But the thought that this verdict came in a time where so much other stuff was happening, and it's still happening, does speak to the continued work that needs to be done. So while there was a sigh of relief for that, there was a picking up of what's next. There wasn't time to slow down and say we won anything, because there was nothing to win. There was just accountability to be had. And so I hope that you all will take solace in knowing that your work is more and more important. And as a therapist, I want you to take care of yourself in that work. I want you to take those moments of self-care and be the examples that your team needs during these moments, so you can continue to lift up justice. So that's my reflection, and just keep it going.
Yeah, I kind of echo a lot of what Monique said. I think, the Greenwood Project works with young people in underserved communities, right? And Black and Latinx students in particular. And last year, when the George Floyd situation happened, we had to put everything on pause and bring in somebody who, a mental health professional, to talk to them. And I feel like we'll probably have to do that again this year. But I think yesterday was a better day, but it's a lot of work to do still. Greenwood Project is focused on the young people who are, in many cases, directly affected by this type of stuff on a daily basis. So although internships are great, thinking about a job in finance is great. there's much more harder work to be done, because when we meet young people who come to Greenwood Project, we meet everybody. We meet their community, we meet their family. They bring everything to us, not just a job application, not just application to get into the Greenwood Project. We have to deal with a lot of stuff that Lois and I probably didn't think we would have to deal with starting a nonprofit organization, serving the population that we serve. But we have to, because they need us. And we feel like we have over 300 kids, because we hear from them every single day, all day long, on weekends even. But in times like these, I think they need nonprofits more than ever, and not just for the services we provide, but for the intangible and the family kind of structure that we provide, because we describe Greenwood as a family, not a program. And that's why students are drawn to us, and they feel welcome here, and they feel like they can always come back to us. So yeah, the verdict, step in the right direction, but we're focused on the work, and there's so much of it to be done still, I think.
And tell us, Bevon, while you're talking about what the work is, what the programs are that you run, and how you're supporting that.
Yeah, so we're focused on helping Black and Latinx students from underserved communities start building generational wealth by providing them with pathways to careers in financial services and fintech. And it's in the kinds of jobs and places that never heard of before or been before. They met us, and again, it's all about exposure. It's all about opportunity. We believe like there is no lack of talent in our communities. There's just a lack of opportunity. And, at Greenwood, our motto is like, kids can't be what they can't see. It's our job to show them that you could be an investment banker. I could, educate them what Goldman Sachs does, or who are all these companies that have opportunities for you, but you're just not getting that exposure. Your school doesn't get a look from these corporations when they're recruiting, because you're not on their target list. So it's really all about exposure and providing opportunity and closing that gap. And what better industry than financial services to help close the wealth gap, right? Some of the most highest income earning careers, our alumni are making average $65,000 after they graduate and get a full-time job through us. So, and we work on the high school level and the college level as well. So for us, it's all about opportunity, closing the opportunity gap, closing that wealth gap, and helping companies in the process as well find more diverse talent and the more diverse pipeline of talent as well.
Well, it's just remarkable work that you're doing, and that exposure is so powerful. I may or may not have been watching one of the videos that you have on YouTube this morning on my stationary bike and crying, because you're just hearing the stories of these kids going to Wall Street for the first time, and then saying the world is my oyster now, and just incredibly meaningful that you're creating those opportunities for them. Monique, tell us the work that Forefront does. I know that you're thinking about these sector issues on a really broad scale. Tell us what your mandate is.
We are one of the organizations that would undergird the work that Bevon and the Greenwood Project does. We stand between our nonprofit organizations and in the middle of our nonprofit organizations and our funder organizations and their allies in Illinois. It's a host of capacity building based in cohort type capacity building for issue areas or for the role that an organization plays in the community. We also make sure that we uplift the work through member networks. So we have over 26 different member networks for the issues that we want to address, similar to the work that Greenwood Project does. A big part of our work actually is undergirded by our public policy agenda, which is based in racial equity. So we want to make sure that the hard work that nonprofit organizations are doing is not stifled by policy that doesn't support it. We also want to make sure that our foundations can work and do the work that they think is appropriate for our nonprofits, again, without being stifled by public policy that doesn't help do that. We also have this very fabulous asset here in our library. So if you think about the research that needs to happen, the research for funding that needs to happen, we successfully moved it all online, but our members have total access to grants and grant opportunities, opportunities to map some of their issues throughout the state of Illinois. So we are the only organization in Illinois that focuses on nonprofits and funders. And we look forward to growing and making sure that we are undergirding all the work that needs to happen post-COVID.
And one of the things that stick out to me, we had a prep call last week, it feels like 3 years ago now, that you shared, Monique, is that you saw in the past year a move towards the loosening up of grant restrictions and some more enlightened ways in which companies and foundations were operating and partnering with organizations, and the hope, but cautious hope that that would continue. Talk to us a little bit more about that, what you saw, what do you think is necessary going forward?
It's so interesting. I do believe all of the regulations that our funders put in place are for purpose. And most of it is very helpful. But in times of crises, what I saw was an expediency of getting dollars out of the door. And in order to do that, that meant a scale back of the requirements, hopefully the very long grant applications and the 6-month processes to get approval for grants at a certain level. So last year, I saw money move as swiftly as it could out of foundations into the organizations that were doing the work. And some of those organizations were not yet nonprofit organizations. They were community organizations that were undergirded by a nonprofit. And so Forefront did 2 surveys last year, and one of which was just an understanding of what they needed moving forward. And those nonprofit organizations, about 450 of them responding, saying, keep doing it. Keep making sure that dollars move swiftly with less restrictions, mostly needed to be general operating, not program support, and to trust the people on the ground doing the work to make sure those outcomes are available. So it was very fascinating. In addition to that, making sure they were using the voice of the folks doing the work to make those decisions. So COVID, as you know, hit every population, every community. There was no one left untouched. So making sure that the people on the ground doing the work were leading and helping making those decisions of where our fundings were going was very prioritized for our funding community last year.
And Bevon, you on this topic has said that it is different to make a donation than to make an investment in organizations and the communities they serve. And just want you to share that with this crew and what that means, because I think so often we really think of Skills for Cities as one exemplar of this, translating what has historically been a transactional relationship with the community to something that is really true partnership. So share more about what you mean by that, a donation versus an investment.
Yeah, definitely. We've shifted our entire language, when we're talking our pitch or whatever to corporate partners, from saying, make a donation at one of our donation levels. No, we need to invest in our mission, invest in these young people and their future. And that's going to take time. This is not a one summer fix. This is not a one internship fix. One example is in the financial services space. For example, if you're going for an interview for investment banking, the average young person from our underserved community is not going to get through that process on their own. It's almost impossible. Multiple rounds and all these types of questions, right? So we've asked our corporate partners to eliminate that process for our students and trust us, like Monique was saying, trust us to go find the young people and train them and get them ready for that internship. And then we'll partner with your employees to make sure they're ready to hit the ground running. So I think in the past, a lot of companies or partners have been hesitant to let us lead, right? They wanted to kind of help manage the process and make sure, it took a while, and then they had to have a lot of say in the process and how we got things done. 2020 turned everything upside down. Like now we are totally driving the bus here, and they're leaning on us as the subject matter experts. So, and I'm very frank with these individuals, and I tell them, if what you were doing was so successful, you wouldn't have a need for a Greenwood Project right now. Your company would be very diverse, right? So, I mean, it's sad that it took what it took in 2020 to get these firms to turn around, but that's where we are now, and I think it presents an opportunity for us to create so much more opportunity for our young people, because we've increased our numbers almost 100% in 1 year as far as number of students we serve, and we're going national and working with firms in London as well. All that came out of 2020, you know. And I think I just go back to Monique's point of like trust the experts because they know what they're doing. With Greenwood Project in particular, this came out of my story, my wife's story. We started this organization because we saw this firsthand on Wall Street. We looked around the trading floor and didn't see anybody else who looked like us. And we wonder why every intern we met over the years was related to or connected to somebody on that trading floor. Right? Internships themselves had become a privilege, which is, you know, and we decided to do something about it with 5 students. And now 300 later, we're growing and reaching more kids. And just proof, right? Proof that the model works. It proves that the kids are out there, right? But for a long time, there's lacked like a broker or somebody in the middle to introduce the firms and introduce the students to each other and understand what both sides need, right? So I think Greenwood kind of looks at itself as a trusted third party almost to really educate students, educate firms, and bring people together. But yeah, we definitely talk about a partnership now instead of saying give us a donation. You know, I think too many nonprofits look at nonprofit work as raising money and then giving it away. You know, for us, we are all about you have to invest in this mission. It might take this young person 3 internships to be ready for that full-on interview by themselves. And you have to be okay with that. You won't per se get a return on your investment for like 3 or 4 years, and you have to be all right with that. And for us, it's opened up an opportunity to create multi-year engagement with these firms, like 3 to 5 years. And that's one way to hold them accountable too, right? They can't sweep in and say this is a PR thing and, you know, they just want to kind of jump on the bandwagon here. But, you know, we are saying, no, if you're truly invested, let's talk about a 3 or 5 year relationship. And let's talk about how we can help each other like get to where we want to be one day.
Can I highlight two things that Bevon said that I also heard from the larger nonprofit community? And it was the idea, you said you increased your clientele by 100%. So BIPOC-led organizations during COVID saw an enormous increase in the need for their services. But in comparison to their non-BIPOC-led organizations did not receive the funding to support that. And so the need is for long-term, multi-year general operating support for these organizations that grew exponentially during COVID and now can't just say, okay, go away.
Right. Well, and we know that COVID impacted the nonprofit sector more deeply and the communities they serve more deeply than other sectors. Like the employment rate and the recovery is going to be slower and harder for the nonprofit sector and the communities they serve. So looking into your collective crystal ball and knowing some of these practices have started to shift, what do you think is next for the sector? What's coming? Do you think, Bevon, some of the examples you gave of a more enlightened partnership model, do you think those stick around? And is there work that we can do to make sure that they do?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm seeing that. I'm hearing that from our corporate partners. You know, the whole world has been shifted, you know, for multiple reasons, right? COVID and Black Lives Matter and everything else. So employees are asking and demanding this, right? From their firms. Shareholders are demanding it, right? So there's a huge shift that I've never seen before. I worked in finance for 20 years and you know, Greenwood Project, we like to say, is a overnight success 20 years in the making, because it took us that long to like get people's attention and get it off the ground. But I think a big shift is happening. You know, again, we work in the fintech and financial industry space, and those firms are doing pretty well, right? So nothing hasn't affected their bottom line. But what's happening internally is employee resource groups and employees and shareholders are demanding change, right? I had a investment bank tell me that somebody refused to hand over their money to be managed by them unless they proved to them that the money managers were diverse, right? That they proved to them that their board was diverse. Our students in interviews now are asking firms, what does your board look like before they accept offers, right? They're saying, what are you doing for my community? I'm from the south side of Chicago, right? I'm from Roseland. and you are downtown. And the first time I met you is when Greenwood Project brought me here for a lunch and learn last summer. I've never seen your brand in my community. I've never seen, right, what are you doing for my community? And they have to answer those questions because they're all looking for diverse talent, right? Our students are some of the most highly recruited at the end of the summer for full-time jobs in finance. And now the tables have shifted as well because students are demanding answers from these firms. So, and this country is going to look very different in the not too distant future as far as population wise. So, the bottom line speaks loudly, I think, in many ways, and firms have to pay attention now, and society as a whole, I think.
Monique, what's in your crystal ball?
More partnerships. So one of the things that Forefront does do well is we match organizations that want to make sure they're able to do their mission and not worry so heavily about the back office support. So we built a program called the Mission Sustainability Initiative years ago to help just with that. We don't want to see nonprofit organizations close their doors beyond COVID. So we're interested in more partnerships, stronger partnerships and collaborations lining up to policy change. So I suspect that our funders are getting their druthers together to think about how to support nonprofit organizations long term, but they're thinking in terms of issue areas, not just one organization. We're thinking in terms of communities, not just organizations. So it's a collective impact model of circling our nonprofits together and funders pooling dollars together to do that in connection with our corporate partners. So everyone can add something to the mix, and it's a systemic approach. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of that because it worked very well during COVID. It works very well for many issue areas when we think about it like that, where there's just a linear relationship between one funder and one nonprofit organization.
And in a lot of ways, that's new territory for all of us, but particularly for companies, right, where that competition is much more the norm than collaboration, and nonprofits and the public sector have had to collaborate to get their work done in many ways. So the sector is bringing a capability and a competency to that work that's going to be really meaningful.
It is. I'm aware that a lot of corporations do want their name on something, to sponsor something. They want to be seen in that way, and that's awesome. More nonprofits are able to do that, but it does need to be thoughtful and really supportive rather than just creating more work for a nonprofit organization to get that support from a corporation.
And Danielle, you talked about collaboration. So just an example, there's a company in Chicago that came together and started the FinTech in Action Coalition, which was about 35 FinTech companies came together to support Greenwood Project in 2020. And there's also the FinTech Equality Coalition, which is led by Betterment.com. But to your point, they're coming together and saying, you know what? Yes, we need more diversity at our company, but the industry needs more Black and brown talent. We have multiple companies doing that for the first time ever. Competition is out the door. It's all about how can we better the industry and these communities by casting a wider net and supporting our organizations on the ground doing the work in the trenches. And for us, that's great news. That's more opportunity, more potential funding and partnerships for us as well.
So I think we've got 83 folks on the line right now who are converts, right? Who want to be part of this work and want to meaningfully be a part and contribute to their communities. So, and Monique, you've touched on a couple of different examples of this. What can companies do? What can individuals do to support some of these really dramatic system changes that we're talking about that actually seem possible and within our reach right now?
This is going to sound really simple and basic, but I promise you it's not, because it really takes a lot. Developing a relationship with an organization by simply asking what they need, knowing what your company, what your corporation can offer, and having that in your mind when you talk to nonprofits so that you can make a good match is the best advice I can give someone. It's really about relationship building and understanding, so that you want to make sure your efforts are aligned and that what you offer when you're able to offer is really, really needed. So in terms of skill set, whether it's board partnership, board service for a nonprofit organization, supporting a full event for nonprofits, those are the things that I think, as Bevon said, supporting for the long term rather than one-off times, and thinking about it in terms of investment and relationships. So it's really clear that you know what your firm is able to offer when you talk to a nonprofit organization, and it really helps them, that nonprofit, really get clear about what they need as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think we saw that in 2019 with William Blair, who kind of invested in our mission and gave us like a 4-year partnership with them, understanding it was all about capacity building. They actually asked us like, what do you guys need right now? Because we see the success that you've had over the last couple of years. Your model works on a, are you trying to grow? Are you trying to expand? You want to reach more students? What are your goals? And then we told them what we were looking for, and they trusted us, and they've become one of our anchor key partners and helped bring a lot of other firms to the table as well. But to Monique's point is really, and we talked about this earlier, trusting the subject matter experts to do their work, empowering them to do their work. And, for me personally, I've never run a nonprofit in my life. I always worked in finance. I've only been doing this for 5 or 6 years. I'm learning on the job every day. So, we lean on their leadership. We lean on people in their marketing department or whoever the experts are on the foundation side. But it comes down to trust and being a good partner. I think we've seen a lot of success with corporations who've taken that approach and then let us kind of lead and in what we do best. And again, it comes down to just trusting each other and being a good partner, I think.
The other thing that I would add is ceding power. So corporations, maybe when the world opens up and we're all back having luncheons or banquets or those things, corporations will support and will sponsor events. Cede seats at the table to some of your nonprofit colleagues. If you sponsor and support conferences or workshops with local universities, cede some of those seats to nonprofit leaders because nonprofit organizations don't typically have a very large professional development budget. And so that is one very well-known way that I know you can increase the capacity of an organization's leader by doing that. And seating those seats at the banquet table is opening up their network, quite honestly.
Well, and I think it really speaks to the power of what we're doing here today and what skills-based can do, because particularly over the past year, we saw the intent and excitement to give back, to donate, to volunteer, to be a pro bono volunteer increase. And what is so often missing is that meaningful activation point, right? The identification of the true need for that nonprofit partner and how you can help. And so I really appreciate you sharing tangible examples of that, and hope that also today is an example of that, right? Where the question of what do you need is being asked, and we're able to articulate that and make that match well. And hopefully in the future, organizations like Common Impact that facilitate that right now are not needed, that happens naturally and is a part of the ecosystem. Not to worry anyone on my team or board as I say that out loud, but like every nonprofit, I think ultimately we want to put ourselves out of business. And what I'm hearing from you both is that we have an opportunity right now to make that part of the vernacular and part of the way that we're building partnerships across sector. So we have just a couple of minutes left before we need to wrap. Would love to hear closing thoughts. And I think from a standpoint of, we really want to activate the folks that are on the call today and give folks next steps coming out of this event. What would you leave us with?
I would say one of the reasons why I became a social worker is because something happened in my life, in my circle, that pissed me off, quite frankly. Made me angry enough to want to do something about it. And it is that case that, yes, I enjoy being employed, but I could do this job if I didn't get paid for it. So what I would encourage everyone on this call to do is to find that passion that, yes, you enjoy getting paid for, but you would definitely keep going and figure out how to pay your bills if you could not do it, as long as you felt like you were working to create change in the space that was near and dear to you and near and dear to creating justice for this world. It could change, it could be fluid, but whatever it is, you will not tire if that is how you choose your purpose.
Yeah, 100% agree with Monique. I think, starting Greenwood Project and working with these young people, I could never go back to a so-called 9 to 5 ever. And, we started this organization and, didn't pay myself for like 3 years because I see the impact of what we do in real time. Like my phone was just ringing because a young person just got an offer at Morgan Stanley in New York for this summer. Never been on a plane before, don't know, but we'll take care of all that, right? So that's the thing about this work. I think, like Monique said, like when you're in it, and especially if you get in it because of a situation you experienced yourself, is very different, right? The passion and the purpose just goes together hand in hand. And for me, I think we have 80 plus people on this call. If each one of you guys can walk away from this session saying, I want to be an advocate for Greenwood Project, because trust me, that's how we've grown so quickly. People are telling everybody else about us. People are meeting our young people and hearing their stories, right? So sometimes we all wonder what we could do to change this world. Sometimes it's just, being an advocate for somebody else in an organization. So if you know somebody in financial services or at your firm or in fintech or wherever that is, we have a lot of students who need internships, right? The work that we do is expensive and it's time consuming. We need mentors, we need volunteers. Go to our website, greenwoodproject.org, and sign up to be a mentor or volunteer. Every student gets a mentor during the summer for 10 weeks. Every student finishes the summer with a funded brokerage account because we are going to empower them, educate them, and train them how to start investing so they can become the first in their family to start creating generational wealth. We are named after the Greenwood community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was known as the original Black Wall Street for a reason, right? We're not just a summer job. We are more than that, and we represent more than that to our students and their communities. So again, be an advocate for us. Even if you have a young person in your family who wants to get into finance or learn about it, we're virtual this year. Send them to our website so they can learn more. I think at the end of the day is really, I'm asking all of you guys just to be an advocate for us and our mission and our young people.
Thank you so much. Speaking of tangible, I so appreciate Monique and Bevon, you joining us and you sharing a little of your perspective. And to the folks that are tuning in and didn't shut down your Zoom during a very long day of Zoom and this busy event, just really appreciate you tuning in and learning more about this sector and the nonprofits that you're working with. So thank you very much. And with that, I will turn it back over to our master ceremonies, Tessa.
Yeah.